Hi there, this is Soldier Owen from Soldier Owen Films, and welcome to part 6 of my Jodorowsky season. Today we're going to talk about The Dance of Reality from 2013. This is the very colourful Artificial Eye Region B Blu-ray. So this is 23 years after the horrible experience of The Rainbow Thief for Jodorowsky. This one kind of came out of the blue, and this is Jodorowsky's most autobiographical film. The film in part 7 is a continuation of this. For me, you could make the argument this is actually his best film. I still think Holy Mountain is, but you can make the argument certainly it's his most honest film. You can make the argument it's the film that has all the kind of facades and mysticism of who Jodorowsky is, kind of, at least partly, the curtains are opened, and we do kind of see into the roots of Jodorowsky, and the common kind of themes that crop up in his films are kind of seen in this film. His films, or most of his films, are family affairs, and this one's no different. His son Brontis Jodorowsky, who was a little boy in El Topo, he plays Jodorowsky's father. Doesn't get confusing at all. Pamela Flores plays his mother. It's a very brave performance. Because Jodorowsky's mother had dreams of being an opera singer, this is his way of making that come true. So Pamela Flores sings all her dialogue. We have Jeremias Herskovits as young Jodorowsky, so not played by a Jodorowsky. However, Aidan Jodorowsky and Cristobal Jodorowsky both make appearances. One as a political activist, or an anarchist, and Cristobal as a wise man who gives the young Jodorowsky kind of spiritual guidance, teaches how to meditate. So that's obviously a big part of Jodorowsky's persona and his films. So we start in the little village in Chile where Jodorowsky grew up, Tocopilla, and there is a mine nearby where lots of accidents happens, and of course there's amputees. That's where Jodorowsky's obsession with amputees came from, and there's a wonderful musical number featuring the amputees as well. And his father, played by his son, runs an underwear shop, but he's a big fan of Stalin, and Chile, like lots of South American countries, is under a kind of fascist dictatorship. This is probably in the 30s, late 30s, early 40s, considering Jodorowsky was born in 1929. And his father, played by his son, is a bit of a tyrant. You know, he believes God doesn't exist, you die and you rot, and there's nothing beyond, whereas his mother believes in God. So it's that kind of mix of the two philosophies. And again, you can see, you know, Jodorowsky can be seen as a mishmash of philosophies, a mishmash of religiosity and dogmas. It's all kind of all mixed into one big melting pot with Jodorowsky, and that comes through in the film. His father was previously a circus performer, so we get a bit of the circus as well, which again is always a throughput in Jodorowsky's work. We get the episode that Jodorowsky has talked about before, where he was angry, so he threw stones at the sea, and then lots of dead fish wash up. And Jodorowsky always thought he caused that by throwing stones into the sea. He angered the sea, and then all the gulls come in to get the fish, but then all the poor outcasts from the village come and get the fish. So again, that's, if you've kind of watched Jodorowsky's interviews, that's an episode from his life that he talks about as far as the philosophy of his relationship with the universe. Is he causing these events? So the father is constantly trying to make him a man. So at the start, the young Jodorowsky, not played by a Jodorowsky, has these golden flowing locks because his mother treats him like her father, and we get this flashback of a naked man with these gold flowing locks running about with a flame, and he falls into a barrel of alcohol and explodes. So Jodorowsky's mother thinks he's the personification of her father, and obviously this upsets Jodorowsky's father, played by his son. So he takes him to the barber and he gets his hair removed, and a lovely little Jodorowsky touch, which obviously upsets the mother, and then the mother kind of disowns him for a period, while the father tries to make him a man by like taking him to the dentist but not having anaesthesia, showing him how to beat up amputees. Because the film, even though it's about Jodorowsky, it's also about his father and the father's journey, very much like the character in El Topo's journey, very much like the disciples in Holy Mountain's journey. The father is part of the fire brigade, and the son becomes a mascot after the dog mascot dies, and there's a wonderful commemorative scene. But there's also an undercurrent of anti-Semitism, the kind of anti-Semitism feelings that Jodorowsky as a child, and also his father, played by his son, endured during this time. So they're always viewed as, you know, almost not proper Chileans because they're Jews. And again, that runs through the film as well. The father, who runs or is part of a secret communist clan, they want to kind of help overthrow the current president. So the father decides to go to Santiago and kill the president's favourite horse, or kill the president, and that leads to a wonderful dog show. If I'm sounding as though I'm just making this up, I'm not actually making this up. This is just scratching the surface. Again, it's just full of wonderful Jodorowsky imagery. Jodorowsky does something that could have backfired, and depending on your viewpoint, either works or doesn't work. For me, it works spectacularly well, and Jodorowsky appears almost on the shoulder of the younger version of himself, to give philosophy, and I personally find it actually very moving. I think this is obviously a much more mature Jodorowsky, and again, if you're one of those people who think he's just a charlatan and he's just, you know, a cod philosopher, I think Dance of Reality might show you a different side to him, because for me this is his second masterpiece, and it's a film that's profoundly moving, and I think that element of himself giving his younger self some philosophy just works really well. But again, you might not think it does. That's absolutely fair. But I think that kind of mechanic that he uses, doesn't overuse it, but it works really well. So while the father, played by his son, is away trying to plot the death of the president, or the president's horse, the mother-son relationship kind of grows. There's an amazing scene where the son is afraid of the darkness, or young Jodorowsky is afraid of the darkness, so the mother decides to cover him in boot polish, so he can become the darkness, and then they play naked hide and seek. It's a tremendous scene. The mother not only sings all of her dialogue, but she is quite a large lady with huge tracts of land, and again, that's just what Jodorowsky's mother apparently was like. I don't know whether his father did go to Santiago and become the groom of the president so he could look after the horse, whether that's just made up. Jodorowsky, who knows? Maybe his father did actually do those things. But again, there's just so many wonderful scenes that I just can't describe properly. Like the dog show, and Aidan Jodorowsky as the anarchist gives one of the most moving lines in cinema history, where he says, I don't want to live in a world where there's dressed up dogs. There's the How to Be Invisible episode where the mother teaches young Jodorowsky how to be invisible. There's a wonderful scene with Nazis. There's a tremendous naked torture scene. There's female nudity, full nudity, male full nudity, characters urinating in each other, wonderful lines like "You're eating my donkeys." I would say it's not as perhaps anarchic as El Topo or Holy Mountain, but it's still, there's not like a couple of minutes that go past without either something very bizarre or poetic or unbelievably moving. There's a whole episode where the father is trying to come back to his family after the events in Santiago, what I won't go into, and he meets this carpenter, Don Jose, and then that leads to a whole separate section in a church involving 100 chairs, which again is quite moving. There's just so much stuff again in the film. It's one of those where I had like a whole page of notes and I just can't touch on absolutely everything, because again, with Jodorowsky you just need to watch it. I think, and also the best thing with Jodorowsky films is watch it with somebody who's never seen a Jodorowsky film, just to see their reaction. Again, in some way this is slightly more polished than his earlier films, but it still contains lots of wonderful Jodorowsky things. It's 130 minutes, but it just flies by. The father's journey, again, is very similar to the journeys of the gunfighter in El Topo and the disciples in the Holy Mountain, as he's exposed to all these beliefs and philosophies and torture and dog shows. And again, the final scene as Jodorowsky is looking back on his childhood is just profoundly moving. And I think Jodorowsky succeeds in this film for something that is deeply personal. He still manages, at least for me, and my opinion is not fact obviously, but at least for me, he still manages to make it connect with an audience, even though it is really personal, because obviously his life is, and his imagination is fairly unique, one would think. But it's just, again, for a late piece of work, again, 23 years later, kind of critics would say it's a return to form, but it's absolutely fantastic. And like I say, for me, it's his second masterpiece after Holy Mountain. So thanks very much for watching. And this is Slaughter Drone from Slaughter Drone Films, saying farewell.